Oh, y'all are good. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We are so delighted that the amazing 10 people here will join us to talk about how we can build Black tech ecosystems nationally, working in partnership with the federal government and with amazing philanthropic communities. We're going to talk about how recently our Congress passed I always have to get the name correct. It is called, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We have $55 billion to correct the digital divide in this country. Not only states across the country is going to get all types of dollars to address digital upskilling, digital inequities, broadband access, and that's not one either. Not a hot mic. But I appreciate it because I can forget. And so my name is Fallon Wilson. I am the Vice President of Policy at the Multicultural Media Telecom Internet Council in DC. Pretty much we advocate for the last 36 years for innovation in telecommunications, broadcasting, internet, and technology. We make sure that DC government does well, not DC government, national government, does well by people of color in this country and policy. I'm also the co-founder of Black Tech Futures Research Institute, where I build local tech ecosystems through index and data and research. I am joined by so many of my amazing colleagues who will introduce themselves, and then we're going to get to this great discussion on how we're going to get them dollars from the federal government. Let's begin with Katarina.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello everyone, my name is Katarina Smiley and I am a digital equity advisor for NTIA. So essentially I help to support our federal program officers in assisting states and territories in applying for our grant funding programs.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valerie Bullard. I work for the Governor Murphy for the state of New Jersey. By trade, I am a transparency officer, and I serve as our broadband advisor. So I get to work with our different state agencies, with accountability officers, and making sure that when we spend funding, there is that transparency.
Good afternoon. My name is Alejandro Rourke, and I am the Chief of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau at the Federal Communications Commission. I first of all want to say it is so good to be in community with you all and back in community with you all. It's really great to be able to see you guys live and in person, not just on the little Zoom boxes. And the second thing I want to start out by saying is I mostly want to just apologize for the suit. I'm sorry that I look like I work for the federal government.
This one?
I should have known better coming to BITCON and Dr. Fallon, but it's really great to be with you guys, and I promise I'm a good person. Please ignore the suit and the tie.
Yes, so I want to say one additional thing, because this is Blacks in Technology Conference where there's a commitment to supporting Black people in this new digital economy. I just also have to say that Valerie didn't share that out of the 50 states and the US, Puerto Rico, and give me the other, DC, who should be a state, she is one of 4 people of color leading these efforts at the state level to ensure that states use these dollars to support communities of color in the next, 3 to 5 years. So give it up for Valerie holding it down at the state level. Okay, so there's a little feedback up here for all of us, but we're going to make this work. Okay. There we go. I love microphones. Okay, so we wanted to not bore you with what is digital equity, what is this broadband, because all of you are technical experts. What I really want to know from the amazing panelists is share with me the U.S. tech and innovation ecosystem. How would it look for Black people in this country if each of your organizations had accomplished its mission? We'll begin first with Alejandro, followed by Katarina, and then Valerie.
Man, I'm in the hot seat. So I think I will preface that I first met Dr. Fallon when I was leading a CEO roundtable of national Latino civil rights organizations. So I think fundamentally my focus was ensuring that historically unserved and underserved communities really, I think, had a voice at the table, that our perspectives represented in policy-making forums all across the country. And also, I think, in recognition that our destinies are intertwined, right? It's not just about the Latino community, but when we think about the digital divide, and it's one thing that I just want to underscore and I want to tell everybody about, the digital divide disproportionately impacts Black communities, Latino communities, indigenous communities, multicultural communities. So when someone says we're trying to bridge the digital divide and none of those people are at the table, that should be a red flag, because that is a problem that acutely affects our communities. So all of that, really inform the way that I think about what digital opportunity looks like, both today and into the future. And right now, I think, unfortunately, the Latino community and Black communities, all of these kind of historically disconnected communities are mobile dependent. And I think that luckily technology is catching up with us and mobile phones are able to do a lot more than they used to. But at the end of the day, we are consumers. We are consuming the ideas, the games, the entertainment that was produced and built by other people. And for me, it's like a fully kind of digital and inclusive future is one where we all have the ability to connect and the ability to create online and the ability to benefit from our 21st century digital economy.
You answered the second part of my question, but give it up for that, yes. But the first part of my question was what the programming you do. So you have to mention the programming and how we get to that amazing vision you just shared.
Okay, yes. So at the Federal Communications Mission, at the Federal Communications Commission, I'll also caveat that Dr. Fallon and I were on a 5 a.m. flight. We have not had a nap, so I apologize for that. So at the Federal Communications Commission, we really see digital equity. We address it and we think about it in a couple of ways. One is we want to make sure that we have accurate maps that clearly show where broadband infrastructure is and where it isn't. It means that we are working to bridge the broadband affordability gap. Many of our communities, the number one barrier that is most cited is affordability. It's not because we love being on our phones. It's not because we don't enjoy or understand the value of the internet and its critical role in understanding essential parts of our everyday lives, but it really is about the price. So we're really focused on bridging the affordable connectivity gap through our affordable connectivity program. And then third, I'm really focused on my bureau, the entire agency, and I think to her credit, the current chairwoman, Rosenworcel, is really focused on ensuring that we are promoting policies that are responsive to the needs of those that we have historically kind of marginalized or have been excluded from having a seat at the table to really inform the policy that the agencies put forward. And all of that is just about ensuring that part of why I'm here is to ensure that all of our perspectives make it to the FCC so that we are promoting policies that expand our telecommunications infrastructure to everyone, everywhere.
And the Federal Communications Commission just received about $14 billion to do the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is the internet subsidy. I like to call it an internet subsidy to ensure that anyone who cannot afford the internet can have it in this country. And they're also eventually, I'm having to prime you because you got to tell the people so they can have the questions. They're going to need partners to do outreach on making sure that we can really ensure that Black and brown people have access to this internet subsidy, and being able to work with amazing folks to do that is what is where you're going with it. Valerie?
Well, I started with the government about 10 years ago and doing low-income housing projects, building different programs. So I think that by nature, seeing New Jersey get almost $500 million when it comes to broadband made it clear that the difference that we're going to see, or that vision, that change, what's going to happen is we're going to see that as we progress in the tech pipeline, right? So we discuss how we will invest in startups, but understand that it needs to have the experience for people to see technology, understand it, to know that they can play a part in changing it, right? So when I think of $500 million, in New Jersey, it's no longer seeing nonprofits that are putting up computer labs in their churches. Now you're looking at school systems and you're saying, this class for computer science this is no longer an elective. This is a part of the core curriculum,
Right.
right? So that carries into the high school. So now we're looking at college. And now that you've had that exposure, we're no longer looking at just 7% of Black people graduating college with a computer science degree, right? We're not looking at 7% of Black people in the tech industry, and majority of them are at a customer support level, right? So once you get into that community at an early age, and goes beyond even the schools having the devices, because you see that there are teachers that don't know how to work this information, right? We've got parents at home that can't help their children because they don't know how to operate this technology. When we have that representation, when we have access to that information, our face, our presence is going to carry through.
And how will New Jersey Broadband Office be assisting in this grand vision that you just laid out?
Well, in New Jersey, one of the things that's huge is that I mentioned we have church communities that have been doing this work. This isn't new to them. So now that they know that there's this money coming in on this large platform, that's them holding us accountable, saying we've been in the community, we've been doing the work. So now it's New Jersey's space to come in and say, where do you need us to spend this money, right? We can't just cut checks based off of mapping and based off of what we think is needed because we can look at a census tract. So when New Jersey looks at this, we're saying that we have to connect with the person. It's not about this population and the number. It's about who's in that community and what is it that they need. So starting off with this money, we're looking at it like we come in these spaces just to listen, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. New Jersey doesn't have a broadband office, but we have people who have been in the community in different capacities. So that brings everyone to the table to say, well, this is the talent I bring to the table. How can I translate that into where it's needed most? So I know New Jersey's gonna be doing big things.
So in addition to the about $14 billion that the Federal Communication Commission got, NTIA got $45 billion to do deployment of broadband, which is the internet. Could you tell us what the vision would be if it's all deployed rightly? What would it look like for Black tech ecosystems in municipalities across the U.S., Katarina?
So as you mentioned earlier, last November, Congress passed that $65 million under President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure bill. $48 billion of that went to NTIA, and essentially, if done correctly, our goal is to have every household connected to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet, and I want to put emphasis on that and, because it doesn't just stop at infrastructure. We also need to ensure that those households, namely those who have been historically marginalized, so the communities that I come from that look like me, we need to ensure that those folks are not only receiving those funds, but they're at the planning table. They're helping to identify barriers. They're looking at assets that are existing within the community to say, hey, we don't need you to start from scratch. We don't need you to reinvent the wheel. We have folks who are boots on the ground doing this work. And so we're taking that $48 billion and we're saying, okay, not only do we need infrastructure, which we're going to talk more about through our BEAD program, but we also have our digital equity planning program. And essentially states and territories are gonna receive those funds to plan out their 5-year Digital Equity Act. And with that, we need to ensure that folks have access to modern devices, okay, not the stuff from I don't even know when, but we need to make sure that the devices are up to date, that they have access to training, to upskill, and to develop and further cultivate additional digital literacy and digital resiliency skills, as well as access to resources and quality technical assistance in order to fully participate in this ever-growing digital democracy, society, and economy.
That is really exciting. When the bill was passed, I was so excited because I understood that we have $65 billion now to end the digital divide in this country, which was a bipartisan effort, to your point. But I am most interested in knowing, in particular, Alejandro, how does the Affordable Connectivity Program figure into that? And why is it essential that we do that work and work to get that internet subsidy within our communities?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, NTIA has lots of money and that they're giving out to every state and they're building out broadband infrastructure everywhere. I think what's really great about this moment in this moment in particular is that achieving digital equity for everyone everywhere is a team lift. It takes all of us at every level. And for the first time, I think, in this kind of like once in a generation investment of our public dollars, our taxpayer dollars are going back into our communities. And the Infrastructure Act and I think NTIA were really clear that that money is going to go out the door with our input. So every state has to develop a digital equity plan. They have to ensure that they are engaging, consulting with historically disconnected communities, Black, Brown, Indigenous. They have to demonstrate that that is what they're accomplishing. They are prioritizing communities that are unserved first and then underserved.
You have to help the people understand this is not DC.
Yep, and it's like we have a voice in that, right? We can raise our hands and say, I'm really interested and invested in this conversation. This is what I think, or this is what's going on in my neighborhood.
Yes.
So that's on the infrastructure piece, right? We all can play into that piece, but then, like I mentioned earlier, the number one most cited barrier by our communities is affordability. And so the Affordable Connectivity Program essentially gives people a discount on their monthly internet bill of up to $30 a month. And so I think that is, for us, because we know the cost of at-home internet, it doesn't seem like a lot, but the good news is that many of the internet service providers that are participating in the program offer high-speed, low-cost plans that would be entirely covered by the Affordable Connectivity Program. So anybody that is eligible for the program, so if you go to a school that offers free and reduced school lunch, if you are in the SNAP program, if you're a student on the Pell Grant, if you already enrolled in a lot of other safety net programs, you are automatically eligible to receive the Affordable Connectivity Program. So it's really broad, and it's set up to ensure that everybody that needs the help to connect has the help to connect online. But we're at a moment where we reached an important milestone as of, I think this month, 14 million people across the country have successfully enrolled in the Affordable Connectivity Program. But we know that there are still many, many more people that stand to benefit. And we also know that me, showing up in my suit from the federal government, is probably not the best messenger in those communities. You guys are the trusted voices on the ground. They need to hear from you guys. And I'll just say, because Dr. Fallon keeps taking us to the money, we have also established the Affordable Connectivity Grants Program, which will go live. I mean, our goal is this fall. I mean, it's fall, so soon. It's soon. Okay. She keeps telling me that. I keep saying fall, and she's all like, it's October. It's the fall. So yes, it's coming up soon, and essentially it's a grant program that can be leveraged by there's a really large breadth of eligible entities that can apply for these funds to do that community level engagement and outreach. Because one thing that I will say is everywhere that I do travel, there are plenty of people that have never heard about the availability of this program. So again, it'll take all of us to spread the word, to tell it at our community centers, tell it at the kitchen table, tell it to our friends and neighbors, tell it to our family, because oftentimes I think I'm surprised by, oh, my family didn't even know that this program was available.
Yeah.
So again, there's resources to do that. And you have a friend at the FCC, so Dr. Fallon is happy to share my information. Please reach out. And we're going to be hosting a few seminars in this fall to walk people through every step of the grant application process. We're not just saying, here's some money, go figure out how to apply. We're really committed and invested to ensuring that you all have the support that you need to be able to access these funds so that we can reach deeper into communities so that everybody understands that there is help and there's resources that are available to ensure that we are all connected to the 21st century digital economy.
I love this because we know that 30% of Black people don't have internet access. And because I also question some of the metrics and measures at the national level on it, I believe it's probably higher than that when we think about those who don't have consistent access. And so the notion that there is an internet subsidy to help with that is great. It's also great to know, once again, I have to keep repeating the money here, because what we have not talked about is a timeline for how all of this is rolling out. I told you that there's 65 billion, 48 billion comes from the Department of Commerce where NTIA is located. About 14 billion goes to the Federal Communications Commission. And they all have to figure out how to get all of this money out to states, southern states where the majority of black people live in this country, to ensure that they will create a plan, say plan.
Plan.
A digital equity plan.
Equity.
And they have to work with community partners like each of you in order to get the dollars from the Department of Commerce, NTIA, to launch that plan. And so many of you do DEI work, many of you are in corporate social responsibility, or you do ERG work, or SER, whatever that term is, you know what it is. You know that many of our states are not well equipped to think about diversity, immigrant, minority communities. And so what I would like to switch to and talk with this amazing state broadband advisor for the state of New Jersey on is how can Black and Technologists Foundation, both chapters and individuals here, begin procurement and become vendors and contractors and consultants of this $65 billion. Clap that up.
But no pressure, right?
No pressure.
So in New Jersey, one thing that we have is the Minority and Women Business Owners Certificate. You apply for that in New Jersey, and you automatically get added to our state's list for vendors. So now I come out and I say, I'm looking at these bids. One of the requirements is that you are a vendor. And now you're highlighted because you're a minority, right? But the buck just doesn't start there. So when I see vendors who come in, you hear people who, you want to be professional, you want to be polite, cut it out. Come with intent. Because for every small company that comes out and they send 1 or 2 emails trying to put out feelers, there are these large sharks that are sending week after week, following up. But when I see emails from our community, from smaller agencies, I realize that you're not just going on Broadband USA and getting my information and emailing me. You're learning about the needs of New Jersey and how you can play a role in that, right? So now you're looking at these bids. You go on these sites, you see them from all different states. Be selective. Don't just get your name out there because you want the dollar, right? Because states talk. So when I speak to New York and I find out that they have an Apple Connect program where they're streamlining their information to the public housing authorities, when they're working with service providers who are actually placing the equipment in these units. So as a low-income person, the minute you come into a public housing unit, you already have access to the internet. Right. And now this public housing already has all of your information, which means they can streamline your ACP application. So not only is this set up, but you're not paying for the internet. Because that $30 that went towards that bill is going towards a bill where an ISP dedicated a service or a subscription for $30 as well.
So are you saying that if you wanted to get a bid in one of our 50 states, especially when it comes to building out internet access or deployment, it would help not only that you be a minority or women or certified business, but if you are able to pull into the other federal programs into your proposal, that could likely get you money.
Oh, absolutely. Because here's the thing, that shows me you're already in the community, right? So a vendor will reach out and they want to ask questions, they want to learn about Jersey. What you don't realize is that you're taking yourself out the race. Because the minute you decide that you want to have these conversations and you want me to provide information, when that bid comes in, now we're talking about conflict of interest. Now we're talking about potential favorism. Do your research. Look into the stats that are out there already. Come into our communities and see what's needed. Because what's going to happen is you're going to see that and you're going to realize that you may have put out a proposal to just create a digital navigation system. But you may start a conversation with someone who knows that there is a whole nother program to provide refurbished devices. So now this digital navigator can be a mobile unit and come around with these devices to help people. So I'd say, don't be shy, don't be bashful. come with intent and make smart moves. Because the minute that you get out here and you're being seen on a federal level, you're not just stuck in New Jersey. Now New York's looking at you, now Connecticut's looking at you, right? Now Maine's looking at you. Because all of this is new. You know, you have offices that have been set up for years. New Jersey does not have a broadband office yet. We're building it, but the clock is ticking. So if you have 3 to 5 years to turn around something and prove to NTIA, to FCC, that we're making a change, we're looking at you as vendors because you have that experience, because you have that connection in the communities. So it's not just on a technical end, it's also on a cultural end.
Come on.
So you start looking at outreach, you start looking at grant writing, and you realize that every state needs that assistance. So that bid is not just gonna come out because we need people to lay down lines when we say infrastructure, the physical part of it. New Jersey is unique in that the infrastructure piece isn't a big thing for us. Our technical landscaping is really much that it's the affordability piece, it's the accessibility piece, right? Very few areas in New Jersey are rural. So when you do that research and you say, I can go to Montana and I can come out with super technical information because there's mountains and hills, we don't have that in Jersey, right? So you're gonna come in with your expertise, with your experience, and realize how much you can truly offer to these communities that you probably didn't consider.
And I have to say, as someone who works at the national level and looking at all the bids, some states have moved very quickly to put out these notice of proposals because they know that they need assistance. And to Valerie's point, some states are new. Some states have never had an internet or broadband office, and so they're literally having to build this in order to get maybe a $5 million planning grant, where then they have to also look, and NTIA, I'm gonna have to jump to you, Katarina, to make sure I'm saying this correctly. They still have to find consultants to help them with analysis, like need assessments of those who need digital upskilling. What does the landscape look like when it comes to those who need access to the internet? What does what does the terrain looks like for going from computer science all the way up to actually being placed at a company? And so states are having to think about this, but as we well know, most of our states don't think about diversity. And my big concern, more so than anything, is southern states. Even though this was a national bipartisan moment, which is amazing because it's very hard to get Congress to pass anything, I'm deeply concerned about the majority of Black people living in southern states and how this money will be rolled out. I will give my thoughts later. I can't say that because all the beautiful government folks are up here. See me after I'll tell you my thoughts on that. But what I am interested in, what I love about Blacks in Technology Conference, what I love about the work that Derek and Greg are doing is that they are literally creating mini Wakandas, in my opinion. Are y'all gonna go see Wakanda Forever? Clap it up. Yes. They're really being anchor institutions within municipalities where they're bridging the gap and being able to align and build community among Black technologists in a city that allows not only for placement and better wages at companies, but also building up a community fabric so that they can do these types of social outreach moments. I want to ask NTIA first, followed by Alejandro at FCC, based on this chapter-based model where I know Dana's gonna be like, I'm about to mess this up. They're like 40 chapters across the African diaspora, mainly here in the US. How could NTIA, given the $45 billion that you have, work with states and with Blacks in Technology, to really ensure that the resources and the monies are really going to create a plan and fund a plan that's going to end the digital divide as we now know it in critical cities?
So one thing to keep in mind with the bipartisan bill is that it is law that states and territories have to take this planning table to the communities. We can't say, oh yeah, we have this plan that we're developing, come see us if you're interested, and if we don't hear from you, then oh well. No, it is written in the law, hey, we have to go into community. We have to know who is doing the work. And I think it's important because a lot of folks who are boots on the ground may not qualify themselves as doing quote unquote digital equity work, but they are. I can recall an organization in Cleveland where they were focused on adult literacy, but when the pandemic hit, they had to figure out how to get all those folks online. They had to figure out, okay, what's EBB? Okay, now it's ACP. Okay, who's the ISP I can go to for affordable, reliable internet? So we're looking to you all, and we're saying, hey, what is the best way to do this? How can we incorporate what's already being done into these plans? Because what we're asking states to essentially identify outcomes. And we don't want them to just take a shot in the dark. We want to know, based on the barriers that folks in the community are already addressing through their work, how can we incorporate some of that into here? How can we work with tribal governments to really work with them and see, okay, what are some specific barriers, to access and technology use in your communities as well? And all
So
those
you want them to have data-driven plans that represent Black and brown people. That means they have to oversample for us.
Evidence-based, absolutely, absolutely.
And could you talk a little bit more about the state officers for NTIA and how that can fit into a chapter-based system that BIT has designed?
Absolutely. So if your state does not have a broadband office, we do have federal program officers who know the ins and out of all of our grants. So getting with them, connecting with me afterwards, and okay, you need who, where, okay, I'll connect you, that's the email, that's no problem, but really getting with them to say, hey, I have this organization, I have this model, I have this, this bid I want to put in, how do I best work with you all to make that a reality? I think that is one of the best ways to ensure that, because we intentionally are putting in a lot of work to make sure that, hey, it's gonna take more than goodwill, it's gonna take strategic investment to really bridge this digital divide.
She's giving y'all play-by-play. My goodness, give it up for Katarina. Yes. Alejandro, how could a chapter-based model benefit with the ACP outreach grants that hopefully that money and those proposals are coming soon, because it is fall?
That's right, 100%. So, I just really want to emphasize the fact that right now, we're throwing so much information at you. And this isn't the end of the conversation, it's the beginning of the conversation. Like I said, you have a friend at the FCC, you have a friend at NTIA, we got a friend in New Jersey now, so that's exciting. And I'm happy, my team is happy to do webinars, to walk you through the programs, to do a train the trainers, to answer any of the questions that you might have about the program. And like I said, we'll also be offering support once we roll out the grant program to ensure that you guys have the tools necessary to be able to leverage those funds to reach the households that are most likely to be eligible. So that I think is something that's really important. When we think about a chapter model, that's where I think is the place where community is. It's the place where community happens. And I think that those are the voices and perspectives that need to be a part of all of these conversations. And New Jersey is a great example where you don't yet have a broadband office. So if they don't yet have a broadband office, or they have a broadband office that has 1 people, 2 people, they really need help. We're not just saying, hey,
because they got $100
say
million.
hello, and they're gonna be like, we're too busy, we don't want your help. They're gonna be like, we are so glad you're here, because we are required to submit this information in order to get our funds to deploy broadband. So they really, really need your help, and we need your help to get the word out. So I just think that whether it's a community strategy, whether it's a community anchor strategy, whether it's a multi-state strategy, I think that right now we need to think outside the box and not just think, well, I'm not a tech organization, right? If you are a child care center, if you are a health care center that helps low-income households, if you're a church, right, that's really committed to ensuring that your parishioners,
We'll go with that.
congregation is connected,
okay.
can get your newsletters, can tune in on Zoom, you have little options to hear the sermons, right? Those are all the spaces where we need to be and where people need to hear about these programs, and specifically about the Affordable Connectivity Program. So if you don't yet have a digital equity strategy, you should get one, right? And that doesn't mean you have a 10-page plan about what digital equity means. It just means that we should all be connected, and there's resources available to ensure that we can all afford the cost of being connected.
And I just want to add on what Alejandro had said. y'all are all technical leaders, and I appreciate that. But part of the challenge, and I think part of the work ahead, is translating this world for our communities, right? Technology is changing how we think about health, how we think about education, how we even think about government. And having like a plan that could talk about how does telehealth look with racial health disparities? What does it mean to move into a cashless economy and where our national government is now talking about cryptocurrencies, but most of Black and Latino families are unbanked? And so when we talk about having billions of dollars to correct the digital divide, we need each of you to be activated locally to drive this planning, to put your bids in, to do the items listed in the planning, and then to apply for the competitive bids. So we need people who can lay fiber. You can be a small internet service provider. We need consultants who can do data analysis work on what does it mean, how do we operationalize digital equity for our state? We need people who are storytellers and outreach people. All the monies that we are talking about can go to all of these things. And if we don't do it now, you know, sometimes I pretend I'm a prophet. I've been called that before too. If we don't do it now, we will be severely left behind. Last week I was in Europe meeting with the European Union, meeting with Great Britain, meeting with some of our countries, and they are all going through the process of what does it mean to digitalize your country? What types of investments? And I would have to say Europe is jumping us leaps and bounds, even with their current energy crisis and war. I want us to say that with this $65 billion, which we will never likely get, to your point, in our current lifetime, given the partisan politics and the upcoming midterm and presidential election, that we have to act now. We're going to open it up for questions because we have about 6 minutes. Are there any questions? You can come get this mic, or can we get a mic? Oh, there's a mic in the back. Give it up for the mic man. Yes. You gotta move a little quicker, sir. We only got 5 minutes.
Hi.
Hello.
I've been doing a lot of tracking of the NTIA. I supported a couple of HBCUs that were applying for the Connected Minority Communities pilot program.
And can I just say one thing about that?
Sure.
That, just so that people know, that was a grant for HBCUs, tribal colleges, and minority-serving institutions to do digital infrastructure on campus, and also to provide broadband for 15 miles around their historic institution.
Yeah, and it seemed like there was this mad dash for states to get their plans in by June 30th, and it seems like it's trickled down to where states don't even have their plans yet. And so my question is when is the money going to be deployed for the HBCUs?
That's an NTIA question.
It is. That's a really good question, and I unfortunately can't speak to specific applications at this time. However, we can definitely have a conversation one-on-one. I will say that we are currently reviewing applications on a rolling basis and are hoping to allocate those funds very soon.
Thank you.
That was a very diplomatic answer to, you know, she can't answer that. Please. Oh, you're the mic man. Sorry. Are there any? Y'all ain't got no questions about this amazing money I just talked about. My God.
Thank you. Sherelle Francis, iLeap Group founder. My question is really quick. I am New Jersey born and bred, so I'll speak with you afterwards because from a community perspective, I think a lot of our organizations, the churches, had to fill in, and they became hub zones. So I think there's an opportunity to really leverage that. My question is specific to the broadband NTIA perspective. Is this, I want to say this correctly, tactical? Are there going to be resources to help with some of the responses or open office hours like they're doing for the Middle Mile Road and resources? Because when we do the grant writing and the NOFOs came out for the TCUs and the tribal nations, they had open office hours, and I want to make sure those resources are available because that's a lot of logistics and there's a lot of nomenclature that is sometimes hard to get through. And I know that for the AI sprint that's going on right now, they have these sprints and they're very prescriptive on what roles are needed. So is there going to be a tactical and prescriptive approach that we can have in front of us so that when we're sourcing and responding, we can respond very tactical and plan in a very responsive manner so that we're ready to come and deploy resources? Thank you.
Say that guy.
What?
What do you say?
No. We will unpack it here in our 3 minutes. What I heard you say is that how can we strategically, at least for Black vendors who are applying, be able to have ahead of the curve to know exactly what is needed from all of the states who are putting out the bids to do because there are 3 things here. There's the planning bid. I mean, they got to get contractors for that and vendors. There's the implementation. They got to get contractors for that. And I know they're going to need evaluators. And so across a 3 to 5 year period, the states are going to need help, but they're also going to need folks to do the work because y'all can't do everything. And so what I heard was in each state, NTIA has what? Each state has what? Digital equity officers.
Oh yeah, federal program officers.
That can do office hours.
Yes.
That's what she's asking.
Yeah, so we have a number of technical assistance materials being developed right now. We are currently in the process of releasing those materials, not only just for states, but for community anchor institutions, community-based organizations, et cetera, to really get their hands on it and say, okay, this is what's needed here, this is the gap, this is the need that I can help fulfill. Your federal program officers are gonna be key in sort of, one, getting those materials, explaining those things, and again, hosting those office hours, connecting you to additional resources, because we really don't want states to work in a silo. We really want to emphasize the importance of regional thinking and collaboration as well, because we notice, to Valerie's point, you don't have to be siloed to just one state. We want your work to be showcased in as many places as it can be.
Now, piggybacking on Kat's statement there, as a state, I can tell you that our FPO, our Federal Program Officer, we are thick as thieves. If I need to contact her within the hour, she's responsive. And so as a state level, and as a state who doesn't have a broadband office, I can speak to the support that we get on the federal end, right? So we sit here, we have our digital equity grant, we have our BEAD grant, they have the middle mile grant. And while we discuss that, we look to connect with the communities, we connect with the agencies. I can tell you right now, I've gone to public libraries where I've seen my federal program officer, and she doesn't even live in New Jersey. She lives in New York, and she's sitting here taking 2 and 3 trains in the middle of New Jersey. And I remember speaking to her and asking her, I was like, Bryn, what brought you here? Are you, what other agencies in New Jersey are you connecting with? And she looked at me and said, every one of them. Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And that forces us out of that space, out of that silo, right? So I can sit here and say, I have worked for grant management, I've worked for low income. However, I haven't done work in the church communities. I haven't done work with our state libraries. So now we have this resource on a federal level, and not everyone expects to have as much federal engagement as we do get. And I'll tell you right now, I'm hearing colleagues from other areas who are getting federal funding, who while they have that support, I can't measure it. It's nothing like NTIA.
Right.
There is not a single question that we have as a state that if Kat doesn't have the answer, she's gonna find the person who has the answer, and that person, if they don't have that answer, they're gonna find that person.
Right.
And you may get 3 and 4 emails by the end of the week because everyone tried to find you the best answer, right? So as a state, I can definitely attest to, we do have that support on a federal level. And all we can do is trickle that down. So there's nothing that I'm going to discuss with my federal program officer that an agency can't come to that same federal program officer and have that same conversation and say, okay, well, this state has this specific grant out or this specific RFP. And I can guarantee you, if we're putting out an RFP, it's probably with NTIA's guidance, right? And so if they're the ones who are helping us create these plans, to the point where they've actually provided us guidance, they've provided sample template for this, right? So they're the funder. They're coming to the state and saying, this is a resource, a tool to get you out there in the community. FCC has created an ACP toolkit. When I tell you down to making cold calls, you will have a full script. You have the pamphlets that you can put in the lunch boxes for the students. You have the flyers that you can put out. You have the QR codes. Any form of outreach you can think of for ACP, the FCC has created it. When I say it's copy and paste, it's copy and paste. I throw NJ on there and post it. So that support is definitely there on the federal.
Alejandro, you have a state broadband officer who is like stumping for FCC right now.
I love the New
So
Jersey
how
hype
about
team.
this? Because time is of essence, and I want to be in good order with Dennis and Greg. If there are no more questions, I would like for you to give me your final. Oh, there is one more question. You're gonna have to make it quick, my brother, because I'm trying to keep time.
Okay, so my observations is like the big boys like Comcast and their digital navigator programs, and they're putting ambassadors to help people get onboarded that may have had previous credit issues. Do you see that a lot of the monies are going to the major players versus like the smaller organizations?
I'm gonna answer it one way as a non-government person, and if y'all want to answer it, you can. It's complex, right? Let me just say that. There are 30% of black people don't have high-speed quality internet in this country, meaning that they will not be a BIT chapter member. Does that make sense? And that number is probably larger, that percent is probably larger based on some of the estimates if we look at other variables. I am of the mindset, I think it takes community. It takes both large internet service providers, municipal service providers, and minority-owned internet service providers to meet the need equitably across the board. I will also say, because I ain't ashamed, because I am honest about what I do like Internet Essentials as a program that Comcast has had for the last 12 years. Why? If I look at all the other internet service providers, see, they can't talk like this because they have to be neutral. I don't. If I look at all the other larger internet service providers, whether we're talking about AT&T, or we're talking about Charter, or some of the larger ones, they have not stumped their toes in ways that Comcast has done the last 12 years. When Comcast rolled out their low-cost option, they did not grandfather in those who had passed Comcast bills, and that was a bad thing. They learned a lesson on that very quickly, and now that is no longer an issue for them. If I had to say, it takes a whole village of everyone working together. I love the work that Chattanooga is doing with their enterprise, the Enterprise Center, where they actually have a full municipal network. Yes. Many cities don't have that because, states are not allowing that for many reasons, right? But I do believe under this new bill, everyone has the opportunity to post a bid to do the build out. The thing I would say about that, you're right. The larger companies, they can harass the state broadband office every 5 seconds because they have the resources to do so. But you better find you an automated service that would do the exact same thing to know when the bid comes out, because they have to have a diversity of bids to get the money from her agency. It just can't be the larger ISPs. But I'll pass it to anyone who wants to take that.
I would say that smaller companies do get discouraged because you have Verizon, you have Comcast. But when you look at it, there's dark fiber for a reason, right? So when we look at the digital equity and we say we have areas that are lacking, that's just fallout from redlining, right? We're literally talking about digital redlining.
Right.
So as big of a company as Comcast is, there are areas that they are not servicing, and it's for a reason, right? So that's where we come in. And you have choices. Do you hold them accountable? Or do we take a local company and say, look, this is an opportunity? Because what happens is, for those areas where there's dark fiber, or where there's areas where there's nothing, it's open season. Anyone can bid for that, right? So Comcast can come in, Verizon can come in, and then a minority business can come in. And now you've got our attention. A minority business created in the state of New Jersey, which means this money stays in New Jersey. Now you've got our attention. Because Verizon, Comcast, they're always going to have a broader network. But it's also keeping in mind that as big of a company as you are, if you're not in this community, you've already made it clear that you don't care. Yeah. You've made it clear that you don't hear us.
And they are not in all markets because of the profit mode.
Exactly.
So all that to say, I think the future will look like a mesh network of all types of internet service providers. And I think municipal and minority-owned, this is probably your greatest chance to corner because of the guardrails that Congress put in with NTIA to make sure that those things are seen. Okay, because I know we have to close out, could y'all give us a final statement that you give them inspiration, because they can talk with you about all the other stuff. Give me inspiration on what this means moving forward, and then they can talk to you afterwards about getting your information.
Before the inspiration, I'll give you guys 2 websites. One, fcc.gov/ACP, all the information you could possibly want, flyers, postcards. If you need to have printed applications, if you need printed materials, email us, we will print them, we will ship them to you.
Question.
You want to have an enrollment event?
Question on your grant.
Dr. Fallon just knows we shipped her a bunch of
Oh,
supplies.
now you're using me as an example. No, but also, just quickly, when you release your grant proposal, they can still use your resources to do the outreach.
Yeah.
So technically, they're subsidizing cost on your supplies. I just want to say that to all of those who are thinking about putting a bid in, but continue.
And if there's something that you don't see, also email us, and we're happy to work to create it. The other thing that I'll say, whether you want to become a vendor, whether you're interested in applying for a grant program, go to grants.gov right now. You can get started to ensure that you have your organization ID, your SAMS ID. It takes a minute. You have to upload a bunch of stuff because we want to be good stewards of our public funds.
Right.
But those are 2 things you can do to get started right now before there's a notice of funding opportunity, and kind of do that legwork. And once you've done that, then you're a vendor forever, right? You're in the system as long as you maintain it. And I think as far as like inspiration, I will just say the only way that we are going to achieve an equitable future that serves everyone is if all of us build it together. And that's just the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. Katarina?
Okay, since we're giving out websites, also check out the broadbandusa.gov website as well. That has a lot of technical assistant materials. You can subscribe for emails for new notice of funded opportunities and other things that NTIA is doing as well. I guess for the inspirational bit, I would say that we're not new to this, we're true to this. Innovate the misnomer that, black and brown folks are not represented in STEM or in, tech spaces because we are somehow not familiar with this work or we don't have the ability. That's a lie. We have the ability, we have the skill. Our ancestry has shown us that, the technologies that were developed many years ago are still being used to this day. We just need the money to do it. And so that's where NTIA is here to do, is to essentially level that playing field and say, hey, you got it, go get it. So.
Very good. Very good. Valerie?
So kind of bringing all that in.
New Jersey, take us home.
Money is no longer an excuse, right? Awareness is no longer an excuse. And when we have these conversations, one thing I try to keep in mind is everyone says it starts from the top. There is no top, right? Because I can't do the work without FCC, without NTIA. But I also can't do the work without the community.
Right.
So there is no top in any of this. Keep in mind that none of this gets done unless we're all at the table. So make sure you're there.
And I would simply say, to build a Black automated future that I know we need, it's going to require strategic investments and all of you to do exactly what they have shared. Like I said, Europe is way ahead of us, and we need to run very quickly to make sure that your aunties, your cousins, everyone is able to get connected, and also to be future members of BIT. I would love BIT to do BIT in health, BIT in education. I have so many thoughts, Greg. But all that to say, we thank you. And yes, thank you for coming. Give it up. Yes.
Thank you.